firm. To you, my Yah, do I lift up my soul. And trusting you, he always kept me whole. And left my enemies deep in their holes. Let none that wait on Yahweh be ashamed. But shame on those who sin without a cause. Show me your ways, please teach me your laws. Oh Elohim of my salvation, I'm staying down impatient as a child all the while I'm waiting. Remember not the sins of my youth. Lead me in your truth and he'll give your soul ease. The earth shall remain inherited by a seed. The secret of Yahweh who fears Elohim, of who believes everything. And to every word spoken, you can't take heed unless you hear somebody curse. You know you did the same thing. That's why I'm begging Yah for mercy and His love and kindness, cause I know that I ain't worthy.
This seven seas, captivity is taking hold upon me. Put frighten me and now we flee from fallen leaves. The grinding grief from all the blood our people seen. And now we cry, where is the word from Elohim? And so we figure we all as wise to be submissive, but we dismiss it. It is of this reason we have fallen victim to the lies that your root will prey and pursue. Rebellious of the sons, forgotten that he is one. Broken the holy ordinance, rejection of reproof. Then acknowledge what we do. Now we return back to the truth.
Yah's word is the truth. Yah's decrees is the proof. Local 12 just released the scoop. It's the summer of Sam. They calling it Pam. Made us worship the Son of Man. And somehow that the moon they stole our style and gave it to Rothschild. Now we exalt the vow, but hit the turnstile. Yah's Navi set the crooked things straight. Praise Yah from the rising to the evening to the closing the gate. Exposing the fake. Yah give the truth a day break. Now the liars can't escape and the haters can't relate to the light the truth makes. See the wicked's pride deflate. You adore Yah, magnify Yah, cause He's great.
Praise the mighty Yah, hallelujah, and welcome to another broadcast of Nothing But the Truth, where we will be giving all praises and all glory and all honor unto the mighty Elohim, whose name is Yah and Yah alone. And I am your host, Mowreh IshYAH YIsraEL of the House of Israel, located right here in Cincinnati at 1907 Vine Street, here to bring you nothing but the truth. We like to say shalom and praise Yah to our viewing audience, for we know that the only reason you have tuned in to us is because of your great love and fear towards the mighty Elohim. Hallelujah. And what will we be discussing this night? We will be discussing questions and answers, but not necessarily taking questions and answers, but the questions and the answers from Yahweh. Yahweh asks some questions in the scriptures, and He gives the answers. Because Yahweh's word is pure. And we're going to see how Yahweh answers some particular questions. So let me go with you to the first question that we want to discuss tonight. And you better believe it, that these questions that Yah asks are questions that are on the minds of the people. They're the questions that we want to know the answers to. And they're also the questions which answers are relevant to our salvation. So let's go to Proverbs, the 30th chapter. In Proverbs chapter 30, start reading at verse 4, where it says, "Who has ascended up into heaven, or descended? Who hath gathered the wind in his fist? Who hath bound the waters in a garment? Who hath established all the ends of the earth? What is his name? And what is his son's name, if thou canst tell?" So here the Almighty asks a few questions. Who has ascended into heaven or descended? Who hath gathered the wind in his fist? Who hath bound the waters in a garment? Who hath established the ends of the earth? What is his name? And what is his son's name, if thou canst tell? If I'm not mistaken, that might be 7 questions. Yeah, 7 questions that the Most High asks. And what's the answer to the first question? Who hath ascended up into heaven? And that answer can be found in the second part of that question is, or who hath descended? And that answer can be found in the book of Isaiah. Or I'm sorry, I got a better answer in the book of Psalms. Let's go to Psalms 50. In Psalms 50, we'll start reading in verse 12, where Yahweh states, "If I were hungry, I would not tell thee, for the world is mine and the fullness thereof." Letting you know he owns the world. Who else is going to descend or ascend into heaven? Also, if you go to Isaiah, the 45th chapter. In Isaiah 45, verse 7, "I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. I, Yahweh, do all these things. Drop down, ye heavens from above, and let the skies pour down righteousness. Let the earth open, and let them bring forth salvation, and let righteousness spring up together. I, Yahweh, have created it." Yahweh made everything. Of course he's ascended into heaven and descended. Look at Isaiah 57. Where it states in the 15th verse, "For thus saith the high and lofty one, who inhabiteth eternity, whose name is holy. I dwell in the high and holy place." He not only ascends into heaven and can come down. He dwells in heaven. If you look in the book of Deuteronomy, the 10th chapter. And in Deuteronomy chapter 10, it states, in verse, let's see, there it is, 17. For Yahweh your Elohim is the Elohim of Elohim, the master of masters, a great Elohim, a mighty and terrible, which regardeth not persons, nor taketh reward. He doth execute the judgment of the fatherless and widow, and loveth the stranger, and giving him food and raiment. Love ye therefore the stranger, for ye were strangers in the land of Egypt. Thou shalt fear Yahweh thy Elohim, to him shalt thou serve, and to him shalt thou cleave, and swear by thy name. And there it is. I'm sorry, I read too late. It's in verse 14. It says, behold, the heaven and the heaven of heavens is Yahweh's thy Elohim. The earth also with all that therein is. So I know they taught you the Christ of the New Testament went up into heaven and came down. But that's not true. It's the Almighty who is the Elohim of heaven and earth. Another scripture lets you know if you try to escape into the pits of the depths of hell, Yah is there. In the darkness, Yahweh is there. There is nowhere you can go where Yahweh has not been or is. Again, Proverbs 30:4 asks, who has descended into heaven and who has descended? Well, the Almighty, whose name is Yahweh, who hath gathered the wind in his fist. Who did that? Look in the book of Job. In the book of Job, start reading at the 38th chapter. Verse 1, where it says, Yahweh answered Job out of the whirlwind and said, who is this that darkeneth counsel by words without knowledge? Gird up now thy loins like a man, for I will demand of thee, and answer thou me. Where wast thou when I laid the foundations of the earth? Declare it, if thou hast understanding. So you see, he's about to ask Job, where were you when I laid the foundations? Let you know who laid them. Yahweh did. He says in verse 6, whereupon are the foundations thereof fastened, or who laid the cornerstone thereof? When the morning stars sang together, and all the sons of Elohim shouted for joy? Or who shut up the seas with doors, when it brake forth as if it had issued out of the womb? When I made the cloud the garment thereof, and thick darkness a swaddling band for it. Yahweh did these things. Yahweh did all of these things. Look in verse 16. It says, hast thou entered into the springs of the sea? Or hast thou walked into the search of the depth? Have the gates of death been opened unto thee? Or hast thou seen the doors of the shadow of death? All these things Yahweh has seen, because all these things Yahweh made. All of these things. He says in verse 33, knowest thou the ordinances of heaven? Canst thou set the dominion thereof in the earth? Canst thou lift up thy voice unto the clouds, that abundance of waters may cover thee? And who is the only one that can do these things? Yahweh. Look at verse 29. Out of whose womb came the ice and the hoary frost of heaven? Who hath gathered it? Yahweh did these things. So when you want to ask who gathered the wind in his fist, the same one that made the wind, the same one that made the rain, the same one that made the storms, the same one that spoke out of the whirlwind. Look in the book of Nahum. If you want to know who controls the wind, in the book of Nahum, in the first chapter, it says in verse 3, Yahweh is slow to anger and great in power. He will not at all acquit the wicked. Yahweh hath his way in the whirlwind and in the storm, and the clouds are the dust of his feet. You can't gather up the wind if you can't have your way with the whirlwind. Yahweh created it, and Yahweh has his way with it. Therefore, Yahweh gathered it. He asked in Proverbs 30:4, who has descended or ascended in the heaven? Who hath gathered the wind with his fist? And who hath bound the waters in a garment? Who hath established all the ends of the earth? What is his name? Well, look here in the book of Jeremiah. Who has done these things? In the book of Jeremiah, we want chapter 31. And in chapter 31, start reading in verse 35. Thus saith Yahweh. You see who's speaking. It's the Almighty. If you want to know who did these things, thus saith Yahweh, which giveth the sun for a light by day, and the ordinances of the moon and of the stars for a light by night, which divided the sea, where the waves thereof roar. Yahweh of hosts is his name. Yahweh divided the sea. Yahweh made the sea. Yahweh set the bounds in the sea. Yahweh is his name. Yahweh did these things. What is his name? His name is Yahweh. He just told you he did these things. Look in the book of Jeremiah, the 5th chapter. In Jeremiah, the 5th chapter, verse 24, it says, neither say they in their heart, let us now fear Yahweh, our Elohim, that giveth rain, both the former and the latter, in his season. He reserveth unto us the appointed weeks of harvest. Yahweh not only deals with the sea and the rain and the wind, he also deals with the seasons, because he's the creator of all these things. But then the scripture asks, what is his son's name? And who is the son of the Almighty? The Christian religion taught you that Yahweh didn't do these things, but Christ did. Christ walked on water. Christ ascended into heaven and descended. Christ was the perfection of creation, and so and this and that. But we see Yahweh did all of these things. He never mentioned Christ, but surely he mentioned his son. And of course, the idea is that Christ is his son. The Christ of the New Testament. Well, let's see who Yahweh said his son is. In the book of Psalms 89. Start reading at verse 19. Then thou spakest in a vision to thy Holy One, and saidest, I have laid help upon one that is mighty. I have exalted one chosen out of the people. I have found David my servant. With my holy oil have I anointed him. And what is this saying? With his holy oil, he made David the Messiah. And what does the word Christ mean? It means Messiah. So you see, he mentioned David as the Messiah, with whom my hand shall be established. Mine arm also shall strengthen him. The enemy there shall not wax exact upon him, nor the son of wickedness afflict him. And I will beat down his foes before his face, and plague them that hate him. But my faithfulness and my mercy shall be with him, and in my name shall his horn be exalted. And I will set his hand also in the sea, and his right hand in the rivers. He shall cry unto me, Thou art my Father, my Elohim, and the rock of my salvation. Also I, who's I? Yahweh, will make him my firstborn, higher than the kings of the earth. Out of the mouth of Yah, he let us know exactly who his firstborn is. David. You say, how is that? Well, look in Psalms 2. Not Christ, not YAH'S HaMashiach, but David. He's the Messiah, and he is the son of Yah, the firstborn. Now, if he called David his firstborn before there was even what they say his name is? YAH'S HaMashiach? If he made David his firstborn before this guy, then how can he be the firstborn? What, did he replace him? No, he didn't replace him. Psalms 2, verse 4 says, He that sitteth in the heavens shall laugh. Yahweh shall have them in derision. Then shall he speak unto them in his wrath, and vex them in his sore displeasure. Yet have I set my king upon my holy hill of Zion. Now apparently, the Christ of the New Testament died on the hill of Zion. But Yahweh said he set his king upon my holy hill of Zion. I will declare the decree. Yahweh, and who is Yahweh? He's the Father. He's the Creator. He bound the wind in his fist. He ascended into heaven and descended. Yahweh has said unto me, Thou art my son. And who's speaking? Who is repeating these words? David is. David wrote the second psalm. Yahweh said unto me, thou art my son, not Christ, but David. This day have I begotten thee. So David is Yahweh's son. David is the firstborn. David is the Messiah. And David is the shepherd. David is the prince. And David is the king. But what other questions does Yahweh have? Even though you've been taught that the Christ in the New Testament is your Messiah, Yahweh has chosen someone else. And of course, people believe that David cannot be the Messiah. But Yahweh said he chose David. And who's going to go against the word of Yah? Only a fool. But go to the book of Amos and start reading at chapter 3, verse 2. Where it states, you only have I known of all the families of the earth. Therefore, I will punish you for all your iniquities. Here's his first question. Can two walk together except they be agreed? And what is the answer? Can two walk together except they be agreed? What's the answer to this question? Well, let's see. Go to the book of Genesis, the 6th chapter. And in Genesis, the 6th chapter, start reading at the 9th verse, where it states, these are the generations of Noah. Noah was a just man and perfect in his generations. And Noah walked with Elohim. Also read verse, let's see. I think I went to 7th chapter. Yep, chapter 7. In the first verse it says, and Yahweh said unto Noah, come thou all thy house into the ark, for in thee have I seen righteous before me in this generation. So Yahweh said that Noah was a just man and perfect in his generations, and he walked with Elohim, and that he was a righteous man. Now, if he walked with Elohim, would it say that he was a wicked man, imperfect and unjust in his generations, and unrighteous, but he walked with Elohim? No, because two can't walk together, at least they be agreed. How are you going to walk with Elohim and you're not righteous? How is Yahweh going to give you the words of walking with him if you're not just, if you're not perfect? How can you walk with Yah if you're not righteous? Well, you can. It's impossible. Yahweh wants you to walk with him in righteousness, in perfection. Look what it says in the book of Genesis, the 17th chapter. First verse. And when Abram was 90 years old and 9, Yahweh approached to Abram and said unto him, I am the Almighty Elohim. Walk before me and be thou perfect. which lets you know what? You can't walk before him and not be perfect. You can't walk before him and not be just. You can't walk before him and not be righteous. Look in the book of Deuteronomy, the 13th chapter. You might say, well, these were some special men that did special things that nobody else can do. Well, Yahweh would never tell you this if that was the case. In Deuteronomy 13, chapter 18, verse 13. Excuse me. Deuteronomy 18, verse 13. It states, "Thou shalt be perfect with Yahweh your Elohim." What is that? Is that a suggestion? No, that is a commandment. Thou shalt be perfect with Yahweh your Elohim. So can two walk together except they be agreed? Well, of course, the answer is no. What is a way that you disagree with the Most High? What is a way you disagree with the Creator? Let me show you. Look at Psalms 104. Verse 19. It states, "He appointed the moon for seasons. The sun knows his going down. Thou makest darkness, and it is night." Look at Psalms 136. Verse 7, where it reads, "To him that made great lights, for his mercy endureth forever. The sun to rule by day, for his mercy endureth forever. The moon and the stars to rule by night, for his mercy endureth forever." Yahweh sees the day as light and the darkness as night. And then he stated here in Isaiah the 5th chapter, the 20th verse, "Woe unto them that call evil good and good evil." So you can't call evil good. You can't say it's good to eat swine, even though they tell you it's good, even though this is the season in Babylon in which they got cases of chitlins and cases of pork ribs and cases of ham, all kind of swine in your stores, all over the place. And they say it's the other white meat and the other is lean and all this stuff, but it's not good. Woe unto them that call evil good, and it is evil. This swine. You might have been taught that it's okay to eat bacon, but it's not okay. Swine is evil. Yahweh said don't touch it. Don't eat it. It'll make you unclean. Woe unto them that call evil good and good evil, that put darkness for light and light for darkness, that put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. You do these things. If you do these things, then you are certainly not walking with the Most High. But if you don't do these things, you are certainly, if you do these things, you're not walking with the Most High. But if you do not call good evil, if you do not call evil good, then you're doing better than most. So you can't walk with somebody if you're not agreed. Can two walk together except they are agreed? Did Yahweh not say that he dwells in righteousness, truth, and judgment? Yeah, he said that. Where did he say that at? In the book of Jeremiah, the 4th chapter. In the first verse, it says, if thou wilt return, O Israel, saith Yahweh, return unto me. And if thou wilt put away thine abominations out of my sight, then shalt thou not remove. And thou shalt swear, Yahweh liveth in truth, in judgment, and in righteousness. And the nations shall bless themselves in him, and in him shall they glory. Now, if this is where Yahweh lives, then how can you not walk in this and think that you are agreed with the Creator? Can two walk together except they are agreed? And the answer is, of course not. They cannot walk together if they're not agreed. You must be agreed. You must be in unison. Did Yahweh say that he made man and woman become married and made them two flesh? No, one flesh, because they walk together. Look at Amos, the 3rd chapter, and look at the 6th verse. Shall a trumpet be blown in the city, and the people not be afraid? Shall there be evil in a city, and Yahweh hath not done it? Shall the trumpet be blown in the city, and the people are not afraid? Well, no. You know, if they blew a trumpet in the city, you would jump. You would be afraid. But look at what kind of people Israel is. Go to Isaiah, the 58th chapter. First verse. Cry aloud, spare not, lift up thy voice like a trumpet, and shew my people their transgression, and the house of Yaakov their sins. He said, lift up your voice like a trumpet. Cry aloud and spare not. Show Israel the error of their ways. And you would think Yah's people would become fearful of the word of Yah. Verse 2, yet they seek me daily and delight to know my ways, as a nation that did righteousness and forsook not the ordinances of their Elohim. They ask of me the ordinances of justice. They take a delight into approaching Elohim. But are they listening? No. Look what it says in the book of Ezekiel. The 3rd chapter, the 6th verse. Start at the 4th verse. And he said unto me, Son of man, go, get thee unto the house of Yisrael, and speak with my words unto them. For thou art not sent to a people of a strange speech, and of a hard language, but to the house of Yisrael, not to many people of a strange speech, and of a hard language, whose words thou canst not understand. Surely had I sent thee unto them, they would have hearkened unto thee. But the house of Yisrael will not hearken unto thee, for they will not hearken unto me. For all the house of Yisrael are impudent and hard-hearted, which means they aren't afraid. They aren't even paying attention to your trumpet. But believe me, if a trumpet blew in their ear, they would jump. When the horn sounds, they get scared. But there's a trumpet that Israel don't want to hear, and they stop their ears to, and that's the voice of Yah's servant. And the reason they don't want to hear it is because they're afraid of it, which makes Yah's words still true. If a trumpet is blown in the city, shall a people not be afraid? Of course they're afraid. But Israel's so hard-headed, they're like, we don't even want to hear it, because if we hear it, then we're going to get afraid. Then we're going to have to start changing our ways, and we can't live wicked anymore. Then Yahweh asks in Amos, the 3rd chapter, verse 6, shall there be evil in the city, and Yahweh hath not done it? Shall there be? Well, of course not. There's no evil that's in the city that Yahweh hasn't done. How do we know that? Go to the book of Genesis. And in the book of Genesis, you want to go to the 18th chapter. And we'll start reading at verse 17 or 16. And the men rose up from thence and looked toward Sodom. And Abraham went with them to bring them on the way. And Yahweh said, shall I hide from Abraham that thing which I do, seeing that Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him? For I know him, saith Yahweh. I know him, that he will command his children and his household after him. And they shall keep the way of Yah, to do justice and judgment. You see, that's the way of Yah. You can't walk against justice and judgment and be agreed with Yah. That Yahweh may bring upon Abraham that which he hath spoken of him. And Yahweh said, because the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and because their sin is very grievous, I will go down now and see whether they have done altogether according to the cry of it, which is come unto me, and if not, I will know. And the men turned their faces from thence and went toward Sodom, but Abraham stood yet before Yahweh. So what did he send these men to do? To judge the city. And what kind of judgment was going to come upon this city? Well, let's get right to it so you can see if this was good for these people or was this evil. And start reading in chapter 19, verse 17. Hold on, I want to get right to it. I'm going to start reading at verse 24. Then Yahweh rained upon Sodom and upon Gomorrah brimstone and fire from Yahweh out of heaven, and he overthrew those cities and all the plain and all the inhabitants of the cities and that which grew upon the ground. Yahweh did that. He annihilated these places, annihilated them, extinguished them, made them to never rise again. Isn't that good? Well, of course it's good because it was a good thing that Yahweh had to destroy evil, but he had to use something that was evil, bad for them. Shall evil be done in the city and Yahweh hasn't done it? You see that this fire and brimstone came from Yah. In the book of Proverbs, the 16th chapter, Yahweh said he has made all things for himself, even the wicked, for the day of evil, which lets you know that shall evil be done in the city and Yahweh has not done it, There is no evil done that Yahweh hasn't done. Because Yahweh do all these things. Go to the book of Isaiah. And let's go to chapter 43. Where it says in verse 8. Bring forth the blind people that have eyes. I'm sorry. Chapter 42. Verse 18. Hear ye deaf, and look ye blind, that ye may see. Who is blind but my servant? He answered the question. Who is blind but my servant? And why is Yah's servant blind or deaf as my messenger that I sent? And why did Yahweh send a deaf messenger? Who is blind as he that is perfect, and blind as Yahweh's servant? And now he's going to tell you why we so deaf and blind, seeing many things as we do, but thou observest not, opening the ears, but thou hearest not. This is Yah's servant who don't know what in the world is going on. That's why Yahweh got to come revive his servant, awake his servant, because you've been seeing things, but you haven't observed the truth because you lack knowledge, you lack wisdom, you lack understanding. And in this lack of this knowledge, you've been blinded. And why do we lack it? Because we rejected it. But Yahweh is well pleased for his righteousness' sake. He will magnify the law and make it honorable. And why is he going to do that? Why is he doing that? He's doing that because he can't have his servant remain blind. And in this magnification of the law, what has Yahweh also shown? In Isaiah 44. Start reading at verse 6. Thus saith the King of Yisrael, thus saith Yahweh, the King of Israel and his Redeemer, Yahweh of hosts, I am the first and I am the last, and beside me there is no Elohim. And who, as I, shall call and shall declare it, and shall set it in order for me, since I appointed the ancient people. Now, did you hear what he said? He said, thus saith Yahweh. Who's talking? The Almighty. Thus saith Yahweh, the King of Israel, and his Redeemer, Yahweh of hosts. I am the first, letting you know who came first. Yahweh did. What came first? Yahweh did. What was made first? Yahweh made it all. He came first. There was nothing before Yah. I am the first and I am the last. It ends with him. Because when it all ends, he'll still be there. And beside me, there is no Elohim. And who is I shall call and shall declare it? Who but Yah is the one that called the earth, that called the light, that called the darkness, that called the earth, the seas, the herbs, the trees, the lights, the sun and the moon and the stars? Who called the sea creatures? Who called the beasts of the field and the cattle, the creeping things and man? Who called? But Yah, who is I shall call and shall declare it and set it in order for me, since I appointed the ancient people and the things that are coming and shall come, let them show unto them. What did he do? He set it in order. Why do you think we're teaching the world about order today? Because Yahweh called it. Yahweh called the order. Yahweh called the days in their order. Yahweh said, let it be 7 days. Let it be 7 weeks, 7 months, 7 years. Yahweh called these things and set it in order. 12 months in a year, 30 days in a month. Yahweh called that. Yahweh declared that. And Yahweh set it in order. And who did he do it for? For himself. Why do you think we're teaching the world about order today? Because Yahweh said he is well pleased for his righteousness' sake, and that he will magnify the law and make it honorable. When have you heard Yah's order taught? Before Yah's servants taught it. People used to do this thing, and some of them still do in Israel. They used to teach out of the scriptures by what they call the portions, the daily portions, or the Sabbath portions. I forget the Hebrew term for it, but nevertheless, who made these portions in this order? Surely it wasn't Yahweh. And you'll have people that will just teach out of the portions that was set in order in this book that they bought, and they taught the people out of this order. And who set that order? Well, the enemies of Yah's people set that order. Yah's enemies did that. And Yah's people were teaching these things. But Yahweh said that he called, he declared, and he set it in order for me, since I appointed the ancient people and the things that are coming and shall come, let them show unto them. Fear ye not, neither be afraid. Have not I told thee from that time, and have I declared it? Ye are my witnesses. Here's the question. Is there an Elohim beside me? Is there? Well, let's see. Yahweh declared the seasons. Yahweh called the seasons. Yahweh made the seasons, and he made signs for the seasons. So surely Yah knows the seasons. But does the one that they taught you for these numerous amounts of years, does he know the seasons? And who am I talking about? And what are we talking about? We're doing questions and answers. But the questions are the questions that Yahweh has posed. And the answers are the answers that Yahweh has given. And Yahweh asks, is there Elohim beside me? And what's the answer to that? Well, let me show you. It's in the book of the New Testament, in the book of Mark, in the 11th chapter, in the 11th verse. It says, and the Christ of the New Testament went to Jerusalem and into the temple. So when he had looked around at all things, that as the hour was already late, he went out to Bethany with the 12. Now the next day, when they had come out from Bethany, he was hungry. Now again, Yahweh lets you know, if I were hungry, would I tell thee? How does the author of this book know that the Christ of the New Testament was hungry? Didn't they teach you that this was the Almighty? He was hungry, and seeing from far a fig tree having leaves, he went to see if it perhaps he would find something on it. When he came to it, he found nothing but leaves, for it was not the season for figs. Well, why didn't he know that? And did he make it the season for figs? No, he couldn't. Instead, him being hungry and in a rage, in response, in verse 14, the Christ of the New Testament said to it, let no one eat fruit from you ever again. How you going to curse the fig tree? You hungry. And that's what you do when you're emotional and don't know how to control your spirit and don't know the seasons. You start cursing things that you can't even curse. Well, you know, Yahweh asks, is there an Elohim beside me? In Isaiah 44, verse 8. And if you thought that the Christ of the New Testament was that Elohim, Yahweh said, yea, there is no Elohim. I know not any. Letting us know he doesn't know this character, that doesn't even know the seasons. Is there an Elohim beside Yahweh? Well, of course not. Unless you can produce any kind of doctrine that would trump this doctrine that Yahweh has already made. And you'll never find anything like that. But Yahweh wants to know, is there? In the book of Jeremiah, the 10th chapter, it says in verse 10, but Yahweh is the true Elohim. He is the living Elohim and an everlasting king. At his wrath, the earth shall tremble, and the nations shall not be able to abide in his indignation. So if Yahweh is the true Elohim, what does that make the deity of the Muslims? That makes him a false god. If Yahweh is the true Elohim, what does that make the deity of the Egyptians? That makes him a false god. There's only one Elohim, and his name is Yahweh. Who else has set it in order? And how do you know Yahweh set it in order? Look at the book of Psalms. Another question. It's really a supplication. It's a request. In Psalms 90, verse 12, it's a request that the Most High servant asked of Yah. So teach us to number our days, that we may apply our hearts unto wisdom. Return, Yahweh, how long? How long? How long? Teach us to number our days and return. And how long? Are you not in captivity? Do you not want to know how long? When should we see Yahweh returning? Well, let me think and let me consider. If the prayer went out to teach us to number our days in a request of Yah to return and ask how long, well, wouldn't you want to know about Yah's order, Yah's time, to know how long? But Yahweh told you how long. It's in the book of Genesis, the 15th chapter, the 13th verse. And he said unto Abram, know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and shall afflict them 400 years. Well, that's how long. But how do you number your days? How do you number your days to understand when the 400 years began, when the 400 years ends? When is he counting? Who is he counting? Where is he counting? How is he counting? Well, if you have the same request to teach us to number our days, then Yah will show you. And who is he going to show you this order through? His servant. Again, why else do you think Yah is teaching us his order? Because he's the one that ordered it. Also go to the book of Malachi. As we discuss questions and answers, but not questions and answers from the people, but questions and answers from Yah. In the book of Malachi, chapter 1, verse 1. The burden of Yah of the word of Yahweh to Yisrael by Malachi. I have loved you, saith Yah. Yet ye say, wherein hast thou loved us? Was not Esau Jacob's brother, saith Yahweh? Yet I love Jacob. Now you see this? Here's the questions. Wherein has you loved us? Yahweh is letting us know what the question will be. You love us. How are you? Where did you love us? When do you love us? Is not Esau Jacob's brother? Esau rich. Esau has the fat of the earth. Esau gets all the money, all the land, all the special treatment. They anti-Semites with Esau. Anti-Defamation League with Esau. Never again with Esau. Don't you love him? But Yahweh said, I love Jacob. And I hated Esau and laid his mountains to waste and his heritage to waste for the dragons of the wilderness. Whereas Edom saith, we are impoverished, but we will return and build the desolate places. Thus saith Yahweh of hosts, they shall build, but I will throw down. They shall call them the borders of wickedness, the people against whom Yahweh hath indignation forever. So Yahweh let you know, even though Esau has all these things, he's always tearing it down. Why do you think Esau always at war? Let's look at another question from the Almighty. Verse 6, chapter 1 of Malachi. A son honoreth his father, and a servant his master. If then I be a father, where is my honor? And if I be a master, where is my fear? Saith Yahweh of hosts. Yeah, is Yahweh our father? Well, where is his honor at? And where did his honor go? And he said, Yahweh of hosts unto you, O priests, that despise my name, And ye say, wherein have we despised thy name? Because he's going to show you where his honor went. Ye offer polluted bread upon mine altar. Where's the honor in that? You know why they offer polluted bread upon the altar? Because Israel decided they wanted to eat the best of the bread. They wanted the best part for their own house. The priests saw that good stuff that people were given to be burnt and waved and said, hold on. I need that. Come on, give me this. This is polluted, but at least you can say I offered something. Say, ye offer polluted bread upon mine altar. And ye say, wherein have we polluted thee? In that ye say, the table of Yahweh is contemptible. You said the table of Yah is contemptible. You despise him because you're doing things that he doesn't desire. You're doing something that he doesn't accept. How are you going to give an offering and you have deceit in your heart, hatred in your heart, deception and contempt in your heart? Yahweh said in verse 8, and if you offer the blind for a sacrifice, is it not evil? And if you offer the lame and the sick, is it not evil? Offer it now unto thy governor. Will he be pleased with thee? Or accept thy person? Say Yahweh of hosts. Yeah, go and give that nasty mess unto the governor of your city. Go to him with this, like, yeah, I'm going to come to you with this meat that got boils and pus in it. What they going to do? Throw that away. Give it to the Negroes. Put it in the Negro stores. That's where they put it. Why you think that's what we eating today? Because that's what we brought to Yah. Refuse. Now when you go to your stores, what do you got to get? Refuse. Look at another question Yah brought to Israel. It's in the book of Malachi. It's in the 2nd chapter. And we're going to start reading in verse 10. Have we all not one Father? Hath not one Elohim created us? Why do we deal treacherously every man against his brother by profaning the covenant of our fathers? Yehudah hath dealt treacherously, and an abomination is committed in Israel and in Jerusalem. For Yehudah hath profaned the holiness of Yah, which he loved, and hath married the daughter of a strange Elohim. Why are we doing this? Because we rather come to Yah with the least and a duplistic and a contemptible heart, because we, as Yahweh said, are hard-hearted. But do we have all one Father? Yes. So what should we be doing? Returning to Yah. Look what Yahweh says in verse 12. Yah will cut off the man that doeth this, the master and the scholar, out of the tabernacles of Yaakov, and him that offereth an offering unto Yah of hosts. And this have ye done again, covering the altar of Yahweh with tears, with weeping, and with crying out, insomuch that he regardeth not the offering any more, or receiveth it with good will at your hand. Yet ye say, wherefore? Yahweh's letting you know, why are you not accepting this offering, Yah? Why don't you accept it? But he told you why. Because we go to his altar with tears, weeping and crying out, but we don't have a good heart. Yet ye say, wherefore? Because Yahweh hath been witness between thee and the wife of thy youth, against whom thou hast dealt treacherously. See, you're not being a man like Abraham, who walked in the ways of Yah and had his household walk in the way of Yah after him, to do justice and judgment. Now, a man cannot deal righteously with his wife and not be a just and a man of judgment. But when you are treacherous, then you're unjust, without judgment, and now you're doing things that are unfaithful. You're going after other Elohim. You're not upholding the law of Yah in your house. You're making whores out of Yah's daughters. You're leaving your wife behind to go with a strange woman. You're not letting Yah's word be exalted. And you've dealt treacherously, yet she is thy companion and the wife of thy covenant. How would you not deal righteously with this person? But you can't go to Yah with all this crying and hollering, weeping and moaning, and you're not taking care of your house. You're not taking care of your wife and upholding Yah's law in your own house, but yet you cry to him with this cry with a duplistic heart. He said, yet is she thy companion and the wife of thy covenant? And did not he make one? Did he do that? Well, yes, he did. He made man and woman one when they get married. Yet had he the residue of the Spirit. And wherefore one? And why did he make Yah one? Though he gave the man the residue of the Spirit, because that he might seek a Elohimly seed. Therefore take heed to your spirit, and let none deal treacherously against the wife of his youth. So you got to understand, Yahweh made you one so that he may bring about more children of Yah, more holy children to fill the earth. But we, in dealing treacherously, have turned that around. And instead of bringing forth a holy seed, we're bringing forth accursed ones. Let's look at another question from Yah, and it's in the book of Malachi. And we're dealing with questions and answers. Questions that are relevant to your salvation, because Yahweh posed these questions. Yahweh presented these questions. And Yahweh gave you the answers to these questions. And in Malachi, the 3rd chapter, verse 7, it says, even from the days of your fathers, ye are gone away from my ordinances, and have not kept them. Return unto me, and I will return unto thee, saith Yahweh of hosts. But ye said, wherein shall we return? This was the question he said we would ask. And this is the question that we asked. How do we return? Will a man rob Elohim? Yahweh asks. And of course you're like, no. But Yahweh says, yet ye have robbed me. But ye say, wherein have we robbed thee? In tithes and offerings. So that's how you done robbed the Most High, in tithes and offerings. You done took his tithes and took his offerings and did it and let it serve you instead of the purpose that he made the tenth for. Say, ye are cursed with a curse, for ye have robbed me, even this whole nation. You want to return to Yah? Bring ye all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be meat in my house. And prove me now herewith, saith Yahweh of hosts, if I will not open unto you the windows of heaven, and pour out a blessing, that there shall not be room enough to receive it. And so Yahweh gave you the answer on how to return unto him. And his answer is, stop taking his holy things for yourself, and let his holy things be for the purpose they were set for, to be meat in his house, so that you may judge the fatherless, the widow, and the stranger. And I think we got time for one more question from the mighty Yah. It's still in the book of Malachi. Verse 13. Your words have been stout against me, saith Yah. Yet ye say, what have we spoken so much against thee? Our people haven't known the Most High. Our people haven't realized the great abominations we've done. So Yahweh lets you know you've been stout against him. And our people have said, how? Ye have said, verse 14, it is vain to serve Elohim. And what profit is it that we have kept the ordinance? And that's what our people have done. The law is done away with. There's no profit in the law. There's no good in the law. You can't live in the law. Well, Yahweh said, you said, what profit is it that we have kept this ordinance, and that we have walked mournfully before Yah of hosts? And because of it, now you call that proud happy. Yea, they that work wickedness are set up. Yea, they that tempt Elohim are even delivered. But that's not how you're going to get saved. That's not how you're going to be delivered. Yahweh lets you know, even though you've been stout against him, there are they that feared Yahweh and spake often one to another. And Yahweh hearkened and heard it, and a book of remembrance was written before them, for them that feared Yah and thought upon his name. And those people will be Yah's jewels. Because even though Yah has shown the rebelliousness and wickedness of Israel, there's a remnant that will remember him. And Yah saw that, and he wrote a book for them. And that book is the Holy Scriptures, is the Word of Yah. Because the Almighty has already showed you his salvation. He's already let you know what you need to do. And I'm going to go to one more, just one more question and answer from the Most High in the book of Micah. I believe I want the 6th chapter of Micah. If I could get to it. 6th verse. Wherewith shall I come before Yahweh, and bow myself before the high Elohim? Shall I come before him with burnt offerings, with calves of a year old? Will Yahweh be pleased with thousands of rams, or with 10,000s of rivers of oil? Shall I give my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? This is the question. how do you come before Yah? And he answered and said, he showeth thee, O man, what is good, and what doth Yahweh require of thee, but to do justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with thy Elohim. And that is how you come before Yah, and that is also how you can retain and gain salvation. Because Yahweh, even though you have many questions, the questions that Yahweh asked and the answers that he gave are questions that are truly relevant to your salvation. And these are the questions that we've been asking. And Yahweh gave us the answers. And even the questions that you think you didn't see in the scriptures, they're there. Because there's nothing that's have escaped the all-seeing eye of the Most High. So praise the mighty Yah. And hallelujah. And Yah is righteous, and Yah is holy, and let Yahweh be magnified. And until tomorrow, Yahweh loves you very much, and so do we at the house of YIsraEL. Shalom.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio.